The courtroom held its breath as Casey Dalton delivered her opening line with the casual arrogance of someone who had never truly faced consequences. At 21, she stood before Judge Frank Caprio with a dismissive laugh that cut through the formal atmosphere like a knife. "My father runs this department, so let's make this quick," she said, treating the proceeding as little more than an inconvenience to be expedited. Judge Caprio's expression remained unchanged, his eyes steady and calm. "Miss Dalton, you're addressing the court. That means you answer questions, not negotiate outcomes. Do you understand the charges against you?" "I understand this is overblown," Casey replied with a wave of her hand. "That's not what I asked." Her attorney, Nina Park, rose smoothly from her seat, her professional demeanor intact, despite her client's combative approach. "Your Honor, my client is prepared to resolve this matter today. We'd like to pay the fines and move forward." The judge's response was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Ms. Park, sit down. This court is not a payment portal." The words landed with precision, and Nina Park hesitated before slowly lowering herself back into her chair. Judge Caprio tapped his pen once against the bench, then addressed the bailiff. "Officer Dantas, confirm we have the body cam audio cued." "Yes, Your Honor." The clerk stepped forward and began reading from the docket. Case number 24-8891, Commonwealth versus Casey Ann Dalton. Charges: disorderly conduct, obstruction of a permitted delivery zone, and interference and intimidation directed at an officer during lawful duty. Citation issued by Officer Marco Reyes, Traffic and Patrol, Thursday at 11:14 a.m. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, his attention focused entirely on the young woman before him. "Miss Dalton, did you receive a copy of the citation at the scene?" "I did." "And did you read it?" "I looked at it." "That's not the same," the judge observed. He turned to the attorney. "Miss Park, is your client prepared to address these charges in full today?" Nina Park stood again, more cautiously this time. "Your Honor, we believe the appropriate resolution is to pay the fines and close the matter. My client has no prior criminal record." "Counselor, I didn't ask about her record. I asked if she is prepared to address the facts. Sit down." Judge Caprio flipped through the papers before him, his movements deliberate. "There's a notation here. Prior administrative warning from campus parking enforcement last fall. Not a criminal matter, but context for judgment. Miss Dalton, what happened in that incident?" Casey shrugged with studied indifference. "I parked in a reserved spot by accident. I moved the car." "After how long?" "I don't remember." The note says 2 hours. The complaint was filed by a facilities coordinator who couldn't access a loading dock. The judge set the page down carefully. "That's not punishment, it's pattern." "Nina." Park tried once more. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges she could have handled Thursday's situation better. She's willing to pay the fines today and move on." "Miss Park, paying a fine doesn't teach anything except how to write a check. I want to understand what happened. Miss Dalton, walk me through Thursday morning." Casey exhaled audibly, her annoyance barely concealed. "I was meeting a friend near the corner of Westminster and Union. There was a delivery truck blocking the curb. I told the driver he needed to move. He wouldn't. I parked behind him to make a point." "You obstructed a permitted delivery zone. He was taking up the whole block. Was his truck displaying a valid delivery permit?" Silence stretched across the courtroom. "Miss Dalton." "I didn't check." "That's a problem because he had one." Judge Caprio picked up another document. "Let me read you one line from the written statement submitted by Daniel Ortiz, the driver. The permit window is tight. Delay cancels the slot." Casey waved a hand dismissively. "No one got hurt." Nina Park objected immediately. "Your Honor, we're introducing emotional context that isn't material to the citation. Counselor, harm isn't just injury. It's disruption of lawful process. Mr. Ortiz had a legal right to that space. Your client blocked it, then escalated when corrected. That's not a misunderstanding. That's obstruction. The judge turned to the officer standing near the wall. Officer Reyes, please read your narrative into the record. Officer Marco Reyes stepped forward, his bearing calm and professional. At 11:02 a.m., I responded to a complaint of a vehicle obstructing a permitted delivery zone at Westminster and Union. Upon arrival, I observed a gray sedan parked directly behind a commercial delivery truck, displaying a valid municipal permit. The sedan's driver, later identified as Casey Dalton, was standing near the truck, arguing with the delivery driver. I approached and informed Miss Dalton she was obstructing a permitted zone and needed to move her vehicle. She refused. She then photographed my badge number and stated, "My father's office will handle you." When I began writing the citation, she said, "Enjoy traffic school duty." Judge Caprio paused, letting the words settle. Officer Reyes, did you perceive that statement as a threat? Yes, Your Honor. Casey leaned forward abruptly. That was sarcasm. I was frustrated. Sarcasm doesn't move a truck, Miss Dalton. The judge nodded to the bailiff. Officer Dantas, play the body cam audio. Just the relevant exchange. A brief hiss of static filled the courtroom, followed by Casey's voice, sharp and cutting. Enjoy traffic school duty. Judge Caprio allowed the silence to hold for a long moment. Miss Dalton, your father is Police Chief Robert Dalton of the Providence Police Department, correct? Yes. And when you said traffic school duty, were you referring to a potential reassignment for Officer Reyes? I was being sarcastic. The judge turned to the officer. Officer Reyes, how did you interpret it? As leverage, Your Honor. An implied consequence for doing my job. Judge Caprio addressed his clerk. Miss Reyes, were there any contacts to this court or the department regarding this case prior to today's hearing? The clerk flipped through a log. Yes, Your Honor. 2 missed calls and 1 voicemail, all from a number registered to the office of the Chief, Providence Police Department, all within 1 hour of the citation timestamp. Play the voicemail. A man's voice filled the courtroom, controlled and professional. This is calling from Chief Dalton's office regarding case 248891. We'd like to discuss the matter and explore resolution options before it escalates. Please return this call as soon as possible. Nina Park was immediately on her feet. Your Honor, my client is not responsible for calls made by third parties. This is prejudicial. Overruled. Pressure on process is relevant. I'm not accusing anyone of criminal conduct. I'm documenting facts on the record. That's transparency. Casey shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I didn't ask anyone to call. Maybe not, but someone thought it would help. Judge Caprio looked at the clerk again. Is Mr. Daniel Ortiz available to give a brief statement? He is, Your Honor, by phone. Put him through. A man's voice, steady and matter-of-fact, filled the courtroom. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm a licensed commercial delivery driver. I had a valid 30-minute permit for Westminster and Union issued by the city. My delivery window was 11 noon to 11:30 a.m. When I arrived at 10:58, the zone was clear. At 11:05, a sedan parked directly behind me, blocking my exit. The driver, Miss Dalton, told me I was hogging the street and refused to move. I called non-emergency dispatch. Officer Reyes arrived at 11:12. By the time the vehicle was cleared, I'd missed my window. One missed 30-minute window triggers a reroute and liquidated damages. I lost the job, Casey muttered under her breath. That's not my fault. Judge Caprio caught it immediately. Miss Dalton, if you have something to say it clearly. I said that's not my fault. He should have planned better. Mr. Ortiz had a permit. You didn't. He planned. You blocked. There's no gray area here. Daniel Ortiz continued. Your Honor, I don't want money from her. I want people to understand that delivery permits exist for a reason. We're not illegally parked. We're working. Enforcement neutrality matters. Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Your statement is on the record. The line clicked off. Judge Caprio picked up another document. Ms. Reyes, this is a text message screenshot submitted by the prosecution. Can you read it? From Casey Dalton to an unnamed contact. Timestamp 11:26 a.m., Thursday. Got cited. He'll make calls. Don't sweat it. Casey's jaw tightened visibly. That was private. It was discoverable. Ms. Dalton, let me lay out a timeline. Citation. Issued at 11:14 a.m. Your text sent at 11:26 a.m. Calls from your father's office begin at 11:48 a.m. Voicemail left at 12:03 p.m. Someone moved fast. I didn't ask him to. But you expected it. Influence attempts don't rewrite events. Nina Park stood once more, slower this time. Your Honor, I'd like to request that the remainder of this hearing be handled off the public calendar. Media attention could create unfair bias and distract from a fair resolution. Ms. Park, the remedy for bias is sunlight, not shadows. We're staying on the record. Judge Caprio fixed Casey with a calm, steady gaze. I'm going to ask you 3 yes or no questions. Did you obstruct a permitted delivery zone? Yes. Did you photograph Officer Reyes's badge and invoke your father's office? Casey hesitated. I took a picture. That's not a no. Did you invoke your father's office? Yes. Did you make a statement that Officer Reyes reasonably perceived as a threat to his assignment? I was being sarcastic. That's not a no, Miss Dalton. The record shows intimidation. Your Honor, this feels targeted. Casey's voice cracked slightly. People block spaces every day and don't end up in court. You're not targeted. You're noticed. Most people don't photograph badge numbers. Most people don't say, "My father's office will handle you." Most people don't have calls placed to the court within an hour. That's not targeting. That's consequence. Nina Park shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, Miss Dalton is a college student with no criminal record. A single lapse shouldn't define her future. I agree. That's why I'm treating this as a learning gap, not a character verdict. The prior administrative warning was a whisper. This citation is a sentence. If we don't speak clearly now, the next consequence might be an officer who hesitates to enforce the law because he's afraid of retaliation. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. 5 seconds passed. 7, 10, 12. No one moved. No one spoke. Casey stared at the table. Nina Park's pen hovered above her notepad. Officer Reyes stood still near the wall. Then Judge Caprio spoke quietly. Accountability gets quiet, so truth can be heard. Here's my finding. The evidence supports all 3 charges. Officer Reyes's narrative is credible and corroborated by body cam audio, the tow log, and Mr. Ortiz's permit record. Miss Dalton obstructed a permitted delivery zone, escalated the situation through intimidation tactics, and invoked her father's position in a manner that Officer Reyes reasonably perceived as a threat. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. This court does not weigh cases based on titles, connections, or family position. Conduct is the only currency here. Miss Dalton, your father's office does not get to intervene. Your status does not erase harm. The law is not a velvet rope. He turned a page. I also note the prior administrative warning. That warning was instructional, not punitive. You were told once that reserved spaces have function. You chose not to internalize that lesson. Privilege hid the consequences. Now they're visible. The judge's voice remained measured as he continued. The base fines total $520. Disorderly conduct, $150. Obstruction of a permitted zone, $300. Interference with an officer, $70. There are no towing or administrative fees assessed to you. Mr. Ortiz bore those costs because of your conduct. Casey exhaled sharply. Judge Caprio held up a hand. I'm not finished. I'm staying a portion of that total, $280, contingent on your completion of a restorative accountability plan. If you complete it fully and on time, that portion is remitted. If you don't, it's reinstated and you pay the full amount. He outlined the requirements methodically. First, a written apology to Officer Marco Reyes and Daniel Ortiz. Not a form letter, not a public relations statement. A real apology that names what you did and what you learned. You will deliver it in person if both men agree to meet you. If either declines, you'll mail it, and the court will confirm receipt. Second, 120 hours of community service with the Providence Police Department Community Relations Division. Not photo ops, not press events. You'll work resident support calls, assist with permit education outreach, schedule liaison tasks, and handle direct constituent questions. The division commander will submit a log to the court. Third, you'll co-assist 3 public workshops on delivery and accessible zone rules. No cameras, no branding, just education. Fourth, you'll write and submit a short public service announcement script for teens about compliance and respect during traffic stops. The script will be vetted by this court. No family mentions, no branding, no grandstanding. Just truth. Fifth, you'll complete a youth driver reflection course covering the impact of obstruction, the function of permits, and the ethics of compliance. Certification of completion will be filed with the court. Sixth, you'll submit an 800-word written reflection on what you learned through this process. Not slogans, not fluff, plain truth. Judge Caprio set his pen down with finality. Mercy isn't a discount, it's a contract. He wasn't finished. Additionally, I'm making the following recommendations on the record to the Municipal Court Administration, the Traffic Division, and the Providence Police Department. He outlined 6 systemic reforms: an ex parte influence log for all cases, a mandatory recusal protocol when command-level offices contact court staff, a delivery zone enforcement escalation guide, a clerk hotline for interference attempts, an officer retaliation shield notice procedure, and a teen driver education module to be distributed through schools. As Judge Caprio finished speaking, the courtroom door opened. A man in uniform entered, mid-50s, silver at the temples, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Your Honor, I'm Chief Robert Dalton. I'd like a moment to discuss my daughter's case. Judge Caprio didn't stand. Chief, this is an active hearing. You're welcome to observe, but I won't discuss the case with you outside the record. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking to resolve this quietly for everyone's benefit. Chief, quiet resolutions are how patterns continue. This case is being handled on the record in open court like every other case. Casey interrupted, surprising everyone in the room. Dad, stop. This is my hearing, not yours. Chief Dalton turned toward her, clearly taken aback. Judge Caprio's gaze sharpened. This is not your case to manage, Chief. Your daughter has counsel. She has a voice. Step back and let her use it. The chief hesitated, then nodded and moved to the back row of the courtroom. Over the next 4 months, Casey Dalton completed the plan piece by piece, though not without struggle. In the first week, she drafted the apology. The court rejected it. Too polished, too vague. She tried again. The second attempt was better. Officer Reyes agreed to meet her at the station. The conversation was brief, uncomfortable, and necessary. She listened more than she spoke. Daniel Ortiz declined the in-person meeting but accepted the written apology. He emailed the court. She named what she did wrong. That's enough. From weeks 2 through 8, Casey logged 120 hours with community relations. She answered permit questions, scheduled ride-alongs for neighborhood councils, and assisted with complaint intake. One resident told her, "Access and permits aren't favors, they're agreements." She wrote it down. In week 9, she co-assisted 3 workshops on delivery and accessible zones. There were no cameras, no social media posts, just residents, delivery drivers, and city planners talking through real scenarios. Week 10 brought the PSA script submission. The court kicked it back. Too much PR language, not enough accountability. She rewrote it plainly. The second draft passed. The driver reflection course took another 2 weeks. She completed it without complaint. The ledger was simple. 120 hours logged, 3 workshops completed, 1 behavior corrected. Officer Reyes told the court, "She showed up. That's the first step." 4 months after the initial hearing, Casey returned to court. This time, she came alone. No counsel, no father, no entourage. Judge Caprio reviewed the submitted documents, the apologies, the service log, the PSA script, the course certificate, the written reflection. "Miss Dalton, I've read your reflection. I want to hear you summarize it in your own words." No script. Casey stood, her posture markedly different from her first appearance. "I thought obstruction was just about parking. I didn't understand that permits are part of a system. Delivery windows, enforcement neutrality, economic consequences. When I blocked Mr. Ortiz, I didn't just inconvenience him. I cost him a job." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I also didn't realize how much I use my father's position as a shield. I've spent my whole life assuming someone would smooth things over. That's not accountability. That's avoidance." "What did you learn from Officer Reyes?" "That respect isn't rank, it's behavior. When I photographed his badge and said what I said, I wasn't being sarcastic. I was leveraging power I didn't earn. That's intimidation, not frustration." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "You stopped borrowing power and started earning character." He signed a form. "I'm remitting $200 of the stayed portion. You still owe $320 total. You'll pay it in installments over 6 months. The court will monitor compliance." "Thank you, Your Honor." "Don't thank me. Thank the people who taught you what I couldn't." 6 months later, the policies Judge Caprio had recommended began to take root throughout the system. The ex parte influence log was published weekly on the municipal court website. Officers received training on the recusal and supervisor co-signed protocols. 3 cases were flagged in the first quarter. All were reassigned without incident. The delivery zone enforcement guide was adopted citywide. Response times for obstructed permitted zones improved by 35%. The clerk hotline received 12 reports of interference attempts in the first 3 months. 7 led to formal reviews. The officer retaliation shield notice was incorporated into department policy. 2 officers filed reports. Both received documented protection. Casey's PSA script was distributed to 19 high schools and included in driver education materials. It wasn't viral. It wasn't celebrated. But it was used. And that was enough. One delivery driver emailed the court. "My nephew watched that video and asked why blocking a truck matters. We had a real conversation, thank you." On a quiet Friday afternoon, Judge Caprio finished his last case of the week. Before leaving, he wrote a single principle on a note card and pinned it to the bulletin board behind his bench. "Titles expire, habits remain. Choose the ones you can live with." He thought of Casey Dalton, of Officer Marco Reyes, of Daniel Ortiz waiting in traffic with a permit in his hand. One sentence stayed with him, something he had told Casey during her final appearance. "Power that doesn't listen becomes cruelty." He turned off the light and locked the door. This is a dramatization for storytelling and educational purposes, not legal advice or reporting.